Special thanks to Warthunder for sponsoring today's video. Alright, so get this. Ever since the 1980s, people have been stealing PC games like it's nobody's business. Everything from ripping old cassette tapes, copying that floppy, to burning a fat stack of DVDs. The art of sailing the high seas when it comes to playing PC games is still being practiced to this day over 40 years later. But what if I told you that there still exist underground, sketchy marketplaces across the globe that create and publish their very own illegal PC games? So in today's video, me and my good old pal Retro Calico will be exploring some truly unhinged PC bootlegs, from playing this crusty homemade version of Call of Duty to investigating this sketchy bootleg that I got from a marketplace in Bangladesh. With all that out of the way, let's get into it. So what exactly is a PC game bootleg? Well, it's kind of all over the place. Here, let me explain. You see, the most traditional PC game bootleg that one would come across out in the wild is your standard run-of-the-mill pirated game bootleg, or however you want to call it. This is when someone sails the high seas, copies a stolen game onto their computer, burns it onto multiple DVDs, then they slap it all together, throw it into a box, and sell it for profit. You would typically find these bootlegs being sold at dodgy flea markets and in game shops across the globe. I would say that the largest marketplace for these type of crusty bootlegs was in China. Now, software piracy isn't new to China, as the country has a long history of looking the other way when it comes to enforcing copyright infringement. However, what makes this video game black market unique compared to other parts in the world is how, at one point in time, the only way that you could play PC games there was by pirating them. A lot of this had to do with the decision made by the Chinese government to ban the sale of home video game consoles for 15 years, which essentially forced the entire market to pivot to playing PC games instead. You might be wondering why the PC games weren't included in the ban, and I think that a lot of it has to do with how the government perceives PCs as more of a productivity and educational tool rather than just a device that you grind WoW with, so it likely falls under it being more of a gray area if anything else. One goofy detail that I noticed with a lot of these Chinese PC game bootlegs is how some of them would have the GameCube name and logo slapped onto the box art, despite the game only working on a PC. If I had to take an educated guess here, this is more than likely just the name of the bootlegging company, as chances are most people in China weren't even aware that the GameCube existed in the first place. But could you imagine if someone asked you what you did for work and you just tell them that you work for GameCube? It kind of sounds like something that you would hear out of like a 2000s Jamie Kennedy movie or some shit. Then you have what's called the game compilation bootlegs. Now, these are pretty cool. This is when a bootlegger manages to sandwich together multiple games to fit onto a single DVD. The idea is that it's designed to give you more bang for your buck compared to forking out $60 just for one game. Now, the only real issue with this type of bootleg is that since the bootleggers have to compress the living crap out of these games to fit onto a disc, this can cause a lot of nasty side effects, like creating game-breaking bugs, broken audio, missing cutscenes, or in most cases, the game is so busted beyond repair that won't even let you play it, which is pretty scuffed if you ask me. However, what makes these type of bootlegs cool is how they differ depending on where you're located in the world. For an example, if you were to explore a marketplace in somewhere like Damascus, you would more than likely come across compilation bootlegs that contain multiple different games on a single DVD. While if you walked into a local game shop in Tehran, you might come across vendors selling pirated flash games. Stuff like this one called 100 Funi Games, Age of Mario flash games, and Batman flash games. Whereas if you visited your local magazine in Moscow, there's a higher chance that you'd bring home a compilation bootleg that is filled with mods for one particular game. Something like this one bootleg that I found called GTA 5-in-1 Collection that claims to have GTA Casino Royale, GTA Die Hard, and the ever-beloved classic GTA Criminal Russia. While we're on the topic of Russian bootlegs, one unique charm about this marketplace is how the bootleggers there would sell stolen early versions of PC games months before their original release dates. A great example of this would be the infamous 2003 Half-Life 2 leak. For those in chat who are still swimming around their dad's sack back back then. The old story goes that back in 2003, a German dude by the name of Axel Gamby hacked into Valve's network and managed to steal not only just a source code for the game, but also an early unfinished version of Half-Life 2 1 year before its original release date. Once word broke out in the streets that Half-Life 2 leaked online, the bootleggers in Russia wasted no time printing the unfinished broken game onto CDs, and within weeks the game was being widely distributed across the country illegally. Apparently these bootlegs ended up pissing off a lot of Russians since they were under the impression that this was the real deal and not some unfinished version of Half-Life 2. You also gotta remember that all this went down during a time when the internet wasn't nearly as widely adopted as it is today, so a lot of people back then relied on word of mouth when it came to this kind of stuff. What made things worse is how some of the bootleggers would label the disc as a patched and final version of the game, despite that being a complete crock of shit. So you can understand just the frustration it would be being a gamer back in 2004 in Russia. It definitely would have sucked, man, I'm not gonna lie. Anyways, that's enough of me yapping about the history of PC bootlegs. It's time for us to go explore a few, starting with this one called GTA IVIV Durka King Kong Edition. This is an old school Bangladeshi San Andreas bootleg that was released sometime in the late 2000s. It was sold by his now defunct game shop called King Software Network, which I guess was one of the big kahunas within the bootleg Bangladeshi scene that specialized in distributing their own modded and pirated software. What's fascinating about this bootleg is how in the main menu, the bootlegger, whose real name is Milan, essentially doxes himself by including both his phone number, first and last name, email address, and even goes as far as attaching a photo of himself. Apparently Milan is also a medical doctor in Bangladesh, which I'm assuming he does bootlegging as a side hustle, I guess. I tried calling the phone number provided in the bootleg.
We're sorry, your call did not go through.
Son of a
Will you
bitch.
please hang up and try your call again?
And it doesn't seem like I'll be getting a refund anytime soon. Alright, so when you first boot into the game, it starts with this cutscene, if you want to call it that, claiming that King Kong is back. Speaking of which, fighting King Kong is what I would describe as more of a no-frills type of experience. It essentially amounts to you pumping lead into him for over 10 minutes until he drops dead. That being said, there still is some variety to the gameplay here, like how he can jump across Los Santos on top of rooftops, he can throw cars at you, and he can even curb stomp you straight into the ether if you're not careful. One thing that I found incredibly annoying when fighting King Kong is that it's really easy to rack up a 3-star wanted level even if you don't kill a single NPC. In theory, I could see this mechanic working if the modders made it so that the police target King Kong instead of you, just like how they would in the movies, but I suppose that's probably easier said than done. In my opinion, the best solution here would have been just to remove the wanted system altogether so it's not nearly as intrusive. Anyways, once you finally kill King Kong, the game gives you that generic mission pass screen, and that's basically it. Game over. There's no rewards, no fat racks of cash, no pat on the back, not even a damn participation trophy. All that work for essentially nothing, so that kinda sucked. You can still explore Los Santos and do the odd activity if you really want to, but you can also do that in the vanilla San Andreas too. I guess what I'm trying to say here is that I was hoping for some more King Kong related things to do, rather than just getting into a simple boss fight and calling it a day, you know? Fun fact, this bootleg is actually based on a free mod called King Kong in San Andreas, which was originally created by this dude named Zaza Mahal. I'd say this version of the mod is practically identical to the original outside of a few changes here and there. A great example of this is how Milan King Kongified all the in-game loading screens, like this one that kinda looks like he stole it from someone's MySpace page. All the music in the game has been replaced with some sick Bengali jams. There's also a lot of weird oddities with this bootleg too, such as how the in-game font looked like it had a stroke, some of the game's audio is either completely missing or broken altogether, and how Milan decided to replace the fist icon with his Tinder profile pic, which is pretty goofy, man, I'm not gonna lie. But overall, I gotta say that GTA IVIV Durka King Kong Edition is just okay. I'll give respect where respect is due, at least you actually fight King Kong here, and I would be lying to say that I didn't have some fun with it. But ultimately, the bootleg ends up feeling more like a novelty than something that would go out of my way to play again. So would I recommend you trying it out for yourself? Probably not. But before we dive even deeper into some PC bootlegs, a quick word from today's video sponsor, Warthunder. Warthunder is hands down the most comprehensive vehicle combat game ever made and is now available for free on PC, consoles, and even mobile devices. Pilot over 2,500 tanks, planes, helicopters, and ships from 10 major nations, ranging from biplanes and armored cars of the 1920s to the fighter jets and main battle tanks of the modern era. Immerse yourself in the intense combat of Warthunder, filled with incredibly detailed vehicles, realistic graphics, and authentic sound effects that place you right in the driver's seat of some of the most powerful war machines of our time. One feature that I really liked about Warthunder is how much depth there is to the gameplay. You see, every vehicle in the game is intricately modeled down to each individual component, such as stuff like engines, fuel tanks, weapons, the crew, you get my drift. What makes this mechanic unique, however, is how each component reacts differently depending on where you cause damage, which makes it so that every encounter that you get into the game feels different from each other. I've always appreciated when games go the extra mile in pushing for immersion, and Warthunder definitely excels in that regard. You gotta love it. Join a worldwide community of over 95 million players in epic PvP battles today. With an unmatched wealth of high quality content to discover, there's simply no other game better suited for fans of military history. Play Warthunder now for free on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, or mobile devices. Use my links in the pinned comment or in the video description to sign up. New players and those who haven't played it in 6 months will also receive a massive bonus pack on PCs or consoles that includes multiple premium vehicles, the exclusive vehicle decorator known as the Eagle of Valor, 10,000 Silver Lions, and 7 days of premium account. This offer is only available for a limited time, so don't miss out. Special thanks once again to Warthunder for supporting the channel. Alright, so next up we got something that's pretty wacky. This is what's called GTA Criminal Russia.
Добро пожаловать в Россию в 92-й год. Закон бессилен, президент урод, разруха нищета, разборки по понятиям, у власти криминал. Здравствуй, демократия, машины везут из Западной Европы. Российский автопром, как всегда, в полной жопе. Таксисту неплохо работать намеренно, да только бабла на него надо немерено, приходится колымить.
So GTA Criminal Russia is a massive total conversion Slav mod for San Andreas. It was created by this group of modders primarily based in, well you guessed it, the Russian Federation, way back in 2005. Fun fact, the team originally had plans to make this mod for Vice City, but once the PC port of San Andreas was released, they decided to move the project over to Los Santos, since it would give them a lot more creative freedom in pulling off their Russian shidovra. If I'm saying that right, I apologize if I butchered that. Anyways, if you lived in Russia in the 2000s, chances are you might have heard about this game or even seen this bootleg being sold in stores at one point, as it seems like everyone and their babushka over there had a copy of it. Now, the version that I'll be exploring in today's video isn't the OG GTA Criminal Russia from 2006. Instead, I'll be investigating a newer version of the mod created by a separate team called Russian Mods Group. It's also worth noting that this version of the mod is commonly referred to online as a GTA United Russian mod, not GTA Criminal Russia. I know that's a little confusing, but we'll just roll with it. Now, before I start to yap your ears off about Criminal Russia, it's worth noting that this mod is massive. I'm not kidding when I say this, but this could easily take you hours upon hours to fully explore everything that this mod has to offer. So for the interest of time, I'm going to be focusing more on the environmental and gameplay changes in Criminal Russia versus dissecting the game's storyline. With all that out of the way, let's start with the open world first. When you first step foot into Criminal Russia, it becomes immediately clear that this isn't your typical San Andreas mod. Like, the world here is a lot more, Slavic. I really can't think of any other way to describe it. Now, Criminal Russia's map is made up of 3 large Russian and Ukrainian cities. All the cities here are jam-packed with a ton of small details, like the endless amount of apartment blocks, local businesses, real-life billboard and advertisements, historical monuments, the whole 9 yards. But what makes this map stand out compared to other San Andreas mods lies in the tiniest amounts of details here. Like, for an example, if you go for a drive along the highways next to the cities, the road's quality is about as smooth as butter, with little to no noticeable imperfections. Whereas in the countryside, you can see that the roads here are a lot more neglected and underfunded, being built on what seems like a foundation of an endless amount of potholes. Another cool detail within the game's world is how whenever you die, instead of being respawned back into Russia, the game instead drops you inside this Russian booby trap prison. We're given no other choice but being forced to John Rambo your way out of it. And that's one of my favorite things about this mod, as every inch of the map feels like it was designed with a purpose rather than existing for the hell of it. No matter what nook and cranny you get yourself into, there always seems like there's something worth seeing around every other corner. And to put it simply, it's just very well done. Now, in terms of the whole Russification of San Andreas, there's honestly an overwhelming amount of stuff to cover here. I'll start with how the modders replaced virtually every single character model in San Andreas with the type of crowd that you probably see inside a Russian village. You got everything from Russian gangsters rocking the Adidas drip, there are a crap ton of babushkas roaming the streets, you got stuff like wherever the this dude is supposed to be, and on top of all that, you now play as Russian Caillou. He kinda looks like if you cross Sid from Toy Story and the default creator character from Fallout 3. Maybe that's just me, but I don't know, he looks pretty busted. Another cool detail about this mod is that whenever Caillou's health bar is next to being fully depleted, the game will start to run in slow motion. Which is pretty nutty, man, I'm not gonna lie. In terms of new vehicles, there are well over 20 new cars that you can drive, including some classic JDMs like a Mitsubishi Lancer Evo, as well as the beloved 90s Toyota Mark II. While we're still on the topic of cars, I gotta say I really admire how the modders took the time to create their own radio stations in the game. And they even went as far as adding custom radio heads too. It's such a great little attention to detail. Now, Criminal Russia also includes an original single-player campaign that takes approximately over 3 hours to complete. Well, at least based on the playthroughs I could find on YouTube, so take that with a grain of salt or a shot of vodka in this case. I wish I could talk more about the story mode in greater detail here, but that's for another day. And honestly, I feel like I've already convinced you guys by now to try this mod out for yourself.
You're just a bitch. Dude, come on.
So, to make a long story short, GTA Criminal Russia is one of the best San Andreas mods that I've played in a very long time. It not only nails that Eastern European setting to a T, but it's also a great example on how to properly pull off a total conversion mod. Criminal Russia is absolutely worth your time, 10 out of 10, would play again. Alright, so next up we got some good old Counter Strike bootlegs. Now this might come as a surprise to you when I say this, but Counter Strike is hands down one of the most bootleg games on PC. It seems like the sky's the limit when it comes to producing some of the most unhinged versions of CS. You've got everything from Counter Strike Source Spetsnaz Edition, Counter Strike Glass Wall that also apparently comes pre-installed with no crack, to this incredibly scuffed bootleg that I found called CS 1.8 Stalker Edition. Back on topic, truth be told, I'm a little rusty when it comes to exploring the Counter-Strikes, so I decided to reach out to my friend Retro Calico, who just so happens to know a thing or two when it comes to dissecting Valve games, so I'll let him lead the investigation from here.
Alright, since I'm experienced with weird source and gold source engine stuff, Mox sent over a few Counter-Strike bootlegs for me to investigate here. And with a name as big as Counter-Strike, you can bet there's a ton of these out there. So since I would prefer to keep my password secure and my credit card balance no more in the red than it already is, just to be on the safe side, I'm busting out my old junk-ass laptop for this one. Look, I don't deny some hard work went into these things, but with installers that look like this, yeah, I'd rather not take my chances. Okay, first of all, what are these CS bootlegs anyways? Well, as many of you probably know, Counter-Strike was originally a Half-Life mod, and that's still how it functions today on Steam. Hell, even Counter-Strike Source later on was kinda just like a mod for Half-Life 2. So you're probably wondering why bother even playing these bootlegs if it's just Counter-Strike with a bunch of mods thrown in. Well, these games in particular are from the Middle East, and in the early 2000s many of these countries didn't have officially localized versions, and retailers didn't offer many of these Western games at all. So for a lot of people there, these bootlegs were the easiest and sometimes only options for them to play games like CS. For all intents and purposes, these really are just glorified Half-Life mods, albeit with a ton of random custom shit thrown in. Viruses included. Yeah, I actually tried out a number of these, and about half of them either didn't work or had a Trojan embedded somewhere. Anyways, first up we've got Counter-Strike The Last Invasion, a CSS bootleg made and released sometime in 2010 in the Middle East. In case you couldn't have already guessed, most of this thing is not in English, which to me is fine as long as I can navigate the menus, because I don't think I'm going to be missing out on a whole lot of plot stuff here. So this one is kind of just like Condition Zero in a way. There's a total of 9 missions you can play with bots. Each of these are really just capture the flag matches on some different custom and official CSS maps. Okay, aside from the installer, it's pretty normal stuff so far. Oh no. Yeah, so apparently this bootleg is supposed to be based off the Iran-Iraq War. No, I did not know this at first, and in my defense, it's not like there's a whole lot of information out there about some obscure-ass CSS bootleg from 2010. Anyways, back to the game here, it's kinda just like playing a fever dream version of Counter Strike Source. Everything gameplay-wise feels pretty much the same as the original, except every piece of content in the game has been replaced with something else. Player models and weapons are swapped out for content that would be more, period correct, I guess you could say. A lot of it is pretty rough though, like the units are the same models as normal CSS, just with reskins that look like someone made them in MS Paint. As for the weapons, it's mostly AKs with some other historically accurate options too. And I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that these aren't original works because I swear these are ripped straight from Gmod add-ons I've seen before. Oh yeah, and when it comes to the missions, you only have the option to play as Iran. You do what you will with that information. As far as I can tell, this bootleg is localized in Persian exclusively, and all the voice lines for the bots have been redone in that language, which meant I was basically just getting callouts screamed at me that I couldn't understand at all. So in other words, it's kinda like playing regular Counter-Strike matchmaking in a way. If there's one good thing I have to say about this bootleg-ass game is that the gun sounds are actually pretty damn satisfying. I mean, it's not the classic CSS sound effects, but shooting the AK especially feels kinda crazy. So I don't think this one's gonna be blowing anybody away here, but hey, it's got some cool custom stuff, even if it's probably all ripped straight from Game Banana, and a somewhat controversial theme, which the internet seems to love nowadays. And what's more, this one didn't even contain any viruses in its super sketchy installer. I mean, at least I hope not. Alright, next up we've got Counter Strike 1.6 Global Offensive 2011. Yeah, not exactly the most creative title here, but it does pretty much tell you everything you need to know about it. It's basically meant to be CSGO, but in CS 1.6. I mean, I guess it sounds kinda cool if your PC couldn't run Global Offensive at the time, somehow. Keep in mind though, this one was released in 2011, back when CSGO was only in its closed beta stages. So hey, if you got your hands on this bad boy back in the day, you got to play the new Counter-Strike early. So this one was made by a company called Modern. Apparently they are somewhat well known for redistributing games with unofficial localizations and extra content in the Middle East. Again, lots of Western games didn't really have official versions made for some of these countries, so they released a lot of these. And this bootleg in particular came in at a whopping 3 gigabytes for the whole thing, which means it's about 3 times the size of regular CS 1.6 on Steam. So you already know this thing is going to be loaded with all sorts of crap. The real question is, what sort of crap? The installer for this one, though, was what I can only describe as concerning to say the least. And it's also not in English, so I just clicked on random buttons and hope for the best. Anyways, after having my eardrums blown out by the menu music ripped from God knows where, I just had to sit here and admire this character render on the title screen. This thing reeks of 2010, man. Surprisingly enough, we get the option to hop into an online match on their own server, which I will not be trying here. Not only do I have serious doubts I'll find anyone else playing, but also because I don't want my network to become part of some botnet halfway across the world. Yeah, offline with bots it is. This one is more traditional CS, just the regular defusal, hostage, and some minigame modes like deathmatch on some custom maps. Speaking of which, this bootleg is packed full of old custom maps. You got Westwood, Pool Day, and everyone's favorite fight yard map, Snow. And you bet your ass that's exactly where I went to first. Despite being on an older version of CS, I'd say this one's a little higher quality than Last Invasion, mainly in the player models and weapons, which seem a bit more polished and cohesive. Then again, that's not really saying much because it's probably all just ripped assets from a bunch of 1.6 mods, but hey, I'm trying to give it the benefit of the doubt here, man. And if you want to know just how bootleg this bootleg is, some of the custom maps didn't even have navigation generated for the bots, so I had to wait for that to do its thing when starting a match sometimes. Maybe one day I'll actually dig into some of these bootlegs and try and find the actual source of all the extraneous content they ripped and crammed into these things. I will say I at least enjoyed this one more than Last Invasion. It kind of feels like I just opened the browser on 1.6 and clicked on whatever server had the sketchiest title and just let it rip. Alright, I'm not going to take up any more of your time with these CS bootlegs, and to be honest, these were kind of the only ones I could actually get to work anyways. They're really just Counter-Strike with a bunch of community content jammed into them. They were pretty damn hilarious to check out though, mostly because you really just never know what sort of random stuff is going to be included here, and that's kind of what makes examining these weird repackaged games so fun. But I'm going to hand it back over to Mock for the rest of the video now, so excuse me while I go and nuke my hard drive to get rid of some of this garbage.
I just want to give a big shout out to Retro for sacrificing his computer's hard drive to make this video possible. If you're into Half-Life related stuff or even PSP content, I strongly recommend checking out his channel. I'll leave a link to it in the description box down below. Next up, we have this bootleg called the Iranian Call of Duty Collection. This is a compilation bootleg that includes 3 homemade Call of Duty games. You got Call of Duty Path of War, the Massive Strike, and this one called Fractured Fronts. Now, the origins of this bootleg can be traced back to being sold inside a game shop within the city of Tehran back in 2019, which, by the way, was 7 years ago. Bruh. Holy shit, we're getting old. Alright, so I'll start with Call of Duty Fractured Fronts. Now, going into this for the first time, I really had no idea what to expect. I kind of figured that would be a mod for Day of Defeat or even Black Ops 2, judging by the game's box art. But to my surprise, Fractured Fronts is actually a mod for both Call of Duty 2 and Call of Duty United Offensive. I guess the idea that the bootleggers had here is they labeled each mod as a playable campaign within the game's main menu, and once you select a campaign, the game will then automatically swap between either United Offensive or Call of Duty 2. I can't say that I've ever seen a bootleg that infused 2 games like this before, so yeah, that's pretty cool. What else can I say? Speaking of which, you can choose from either the Civil War campaign or the Europe War campaign. Now, the Civil War campaign is just a repackaged version of a popular Call of Duty 2 mod called 1936 to 1939, the Spanish Civil War, released in the GOAT year that was 2012. For those who have never played this before, this is a really impressive fan-made mod that includes over 20 playable missions, original voiceover work, and cutscenes made entirely all in engine. The team handcrafted brand new journals inside the loading screens. You got a ton of new weapons to choose from, like the Spanish 1893 Mauser. There's also a lot of cool small attention to details here as well, like how your character will hoist his gun whenever he's not using it, and I love how instead of being able to bitch slap people with the butt of your gun, the game now lets you use your rifle's bayonet. It's actually kind of sick. In terms of the bootleg, from what I could tell, the bootleggers essentially just copied and pasted the mod onto a blank DVD and called it quits, since it doesn't seem like they made any sort of conscious effort to add or do anything cool with the mod. Now, don't get me wrong, the mod does kick ass, and it seems like it was made by a team who at least knew what they were doing. I just think that by charging people for a mod that you got for 100% free without adding any additional value to it, outside of including a simple hyperlink, is just pretty greasy, at least in my opinion.
Es inútil continuar la lucha.
Meanwhile, the European campaign is just the vanilla Call of Duty United offensive campaign with absolutely zero context to the who, what, where, and why on what you're actually supposed to be doing here. The game just drops you into a random ass mission and expects you to pick up the missing pieces, so that kinda sucks. It seems like the bootleggers poured more effort into plugging their logo onto every loading screen than they did actually putting effort into making this game. It's kinda wild there, man. And finally, we have Call of Duty The Massive Strike. Now, this one is pretty wacky. You see, the Massive Strike isn't a Call of Duty mod bootleg type of macaroni or anything like that. Instead, it's a bootleg for Crisis Wars. I went digging through the game's files, and from what I could tell, it seems like the bootleggers used this popular Crisis War mod called Wreckage. From there, they took that mod and poured in a good amount of effort into transforming the mod into something that looks like it was ripped straight out of Modern Warfare 2's campaign. And honestly, it works surprisingly well. So when you first boot into the Massive Strike, it greets you with this full motion video. I can't tell whether or not this is from the Wreckage mod or was created by the bootleggers themselves. It's pretty random, I'm not gonna lie, but hey, at least it looks kinda cool. So the first scene in the game has you riding around in a helicopter, with the whole game being dubbed in what I believe is Persian.
خیلی خوب حواستون رو جمع کنید که به غیر از دشمن کسی رو نزنید. تا جایی که بتونید پوشش میدیم 0-1.
After flying around in the helicopter and shooting some fellas, eventually the helicopter reaches an evac point. After that, you're dropped into a middle of a gunfight where, surprise, surprise, you gotta cap some fellas. And then you follow a convoy to Timbuktu, and that's about as far as I could get before I start to feel like I needed to hurl. If you're wondering why the footage on screen right now looks kinda shitty, it's because I record this whole segment on my $90 AliExpress mini PC. You see, I tried subjecting my other computer to this janky crap, and my PC basically told me to go take a hike and refuse to run this game, regardless of how many hours I wasted trying to troubleshoot it. The only device that seemed to want to run the Massive Strike was a shitty Express PC, so I guess it's not so crappy after all. Actually, nah, I take that back, this thing's pretty busted. And honestly guys, I could talk day and night like Kid Cudi about how busted this bootleg is. I'll save Mother Nature some air and say that the Massive Strike is basically beyond repair. And I gotta say, that's a real damn shame. Like, the Wreckage mod seems like it's very well put together, and I think with the addition of the Modern Warfare 2 assets, it does complement the experience rather than detracting from it. If the bootleggers didn't hire Bethesda to QA test the game, I think there's a lot of potential here for it to be a banger. I can definitely see myself playing through it one of these days on a Saturday afternoon or something like that. I just gotta find a way to play on something that isn't a potato. Also, I want to say a big shout out to Warthunder once again for sponsoring today's video. Make sure you check out Warthunder now for free on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, or on mobile devices, and use my link in the pinned comment or in the video description to register. Those of you who are new or haven't played it for 6 months will also receive a massive bonus pack across PC and consoles, including multiple premium vehicles, in-game currency, and more. But before I end this video off, I would like to give a big shout out to the following YouTube and 4 local band tier members for their continued support. The following members are Hurdy, OG Newbie, Solaris, Indecisiveness, Alex, Phantom Stones, Dylan, Vanilla64, Failing, Blake Love, RIP, Skate Punk, Maddie's Gamer, PR Gaming 5063, Zero Zuka, Rest in Peace MF Doom, Jimmy, The Great Papyrus, Lucas 610, Shorkweek, Gear Shifters, Billy Hatcher 643, Pyra, Hydraulic Monkey, BGZ33, Ale Reznov, Twin 10, brother! Leviathan, Nikki, Tank Rizzo 1, Andrew TSQ, Sob 25, Nun Cheesecake, Onaglir 4072, Infamous, Lisi the Musician, Joe Mama Obama 7578, Armadeus 8492, Scoot the Raccoon 3193, I Am the Gunna, Wade's Retro Revive, Zaza McBoof, Fruzilla, and Canadian Jelly. Thank you guys so much, it is always greatly appreciated. Also, big shout out once again to Retro Calico for collaborating with me on this video. He is a great content creator. I'll drop a link to his channel in the description box down below. And if you made it this far into the video, I just want to say thank you too. You are awesome. I'm currently working on bringing back the most active online series, starting with the PlayStation 2 this year. I'm not too sure how many consoles I'll do or get around to doing for that matter, but I definitely like to bring it back, so stay tuned for that. It's gonna be a banger. Anyways, if you guys enjoy this style of content, please consider leaving a like or even a subscription. It is always greatly appreciated. But until next time, fellas, peace.
The landing wheels aren't retracting!
Yeah? And the number 2 nozzle won't work either.
What? Are you for real? We can't land
Oh, well.
without them! I knew I should
Whatever
have
happens,
I'm only 18,
happens.
I don't want to die!